my own personal experience, I suppose I first saw you 4 or 5 years ago, and you talk. I'm fascinated what you said about Roncalli and about the giving people a sense of wonder and a sense of fulfillment, and there's almost a life force there, isn't there? And I remember coming out of that first show, having seen you guys, and I kind of felt life was worth living after
so
seeing
nice
you. But that's the effect that you guys have. And it was really interesting hearing you talk about Roncalli and how that's what you got from them and what you've kind of passed on through Giffords. So clearly it was working,
yes,
and has continued to work. But if I could just talk a little bit about the mechanics of that. I mean, where do you find all these fantastic acts and things like that? Because they come from all over the place, don't they?
Yeah, so the acts, the acts are from anywhere and everywhere. And you have to make sure that objective of euphoria that's a conscious objective, and that's what we strive for in the show. I mean, it's not enough just to be moved. I want to cry. It's like that's what one of the choreographers we worked with a couple of years ago. It's like, I don't want to just be moved. I want to cry, please. It can't just be quite good. I want to be moved by this thing. Like I have to have my emotions actually stirred. Otherwise, it isn't working. And so you have to make sure the performers are going to come on side with that objective as well and understand that. So what we do is. We just go wherever we can within time and budget. We just go where we can in the world to find people. I mean, we're a bit. So we started in kind of 2003. I think we made our first 2003. We made our first kind of real adventures abroad. Totti and I went over to Romania to the National Circus School, like the State Circus School there. And we went to Moscow. We've been back to Moscow quite a few times, and looking and discovering, the huge sort of like state-funded kind of communist era network of circus schools and buildings in Eastern Europe and Russia, because the communists loved circus. They invested in it massively, and these buildings still exist. So huge concrete, like bigger than the Albert Hall. That would just be the training place, and artists that are on salaries to train, so they'll go in and they'll train every day for all of their life, and they may not even be working in a show, so they're training, so they reach an incredibly high standard. It's all very serious, and there's not many sort of smiles or people cracking jokes. Yeah. It's like knuckle down and spend 8 hours a day standing in front of a mirror juggling like ping pong balls, and that's what they'll do like 5 days a week. And then sometimes it's just been lucky. Like I was walking in Paris, I'd been to see a friend, and I just heard this brass band stand on a street corner in Saint-Germain, and I just loved the sound of the band, and it just sounded so like it just hit that kind of euphoric feeling. And so I left them my card, and they were a group of French students at the École des Beaux-Arts, and they were a student brass band, and they all came, like all 15 of them came over and joined us in 2008, and they were tremendously creative and understanding of the kind of the wider sense of the project and what we were up to, because they were kind of conceptual artists. So they threw themselves in with a huge amount of energy, which was really, that was like a lovely, if you can find people on the street so you can see, I think that you need that sort of magic. Yeah. Or if you go and find them, it does give a magic to the work.
One thing that's always struck me, actually, I mean, talking of the people that take part in the show, is that there is this sense that everybody's kind of doing everything. The fact that the person will be playing in the band 1 second, and then they're down, doing something in the ring, and all the performers also do the kind of dancing at the end and all that sort of thing. And so these very straight-laced Eastern European, or apparently straight-laced Eastern European acrobats or something, they know all the moves, they know the dancing, and that in itself is extraordinary and kind of life-affirming as well. And so you've obviously got to find people who are prepared to kind of take on the whole job rather than just do their act.
No, completely. And for the Russian, that's very challenging for Russian trained gymnastic people. They don't want to do something that they can't necessarily do incredibly well. So to ask them to sing and dance, and they're not trained to sing and dance, and they're well used to working with singers and dancers, but we've had to kind of develop ways of getting them to do that and to make them feel safe enough to do that and to make them feel, to understand that we're not going to make them look stupid. You know, they might feel uncomfortable, they might feel silly, but they won't look silly, that we'll make them look good. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, and not 10 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, they embrace it and they go with it, and they actually really love it. They love their work here. I mean, it's also working with theatre practice, you know, kind of directors and choreographers and mentors who know how to work with people, and know how to kind of to reach someone and to access what they've got to give and to make them feel good about it. I mean, so that's been. So alongside the show performers, there's a whole kind of our little world of so like a lovely man called Barry Grantham, who's an elderly so he does eccentric. Him and his wife, they teach eccentric dance like Commedia dell'arte. His father was with the Diaghilev troupe, so he's kind of steeped in show business, and he teaches all these. They're arcane, like Max Wall arcane dance steps. I mean, you see them in kind of cartoons and things, right. And they're so fun. So we'll get the whole company in the barn, and he'll drill them through these dances, and so he's working on putting the companies together. And then we work with a really great composer called Sarah Llewellyn, who she worked getting everybody singing. And
I wanted to ask you about Sarah, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, but the music is a huge part of this, isn't it? Well, it certainly is from a person in the audience's point of view. I mean, I'm an amateur musician. I love music, and the music blew me away when I first saw Giffords. I mean, I was so impressed with the music, its originality, the fact that it was totally live, that you had an orchestra there of all these weird and wonderful acoustic instruments and all this sort of thing. I mean, that's a brilliant part of it, and you seem to have been able to meld these amazing acts, the sort of perhaps traditional circus acts, with this extraordinary musical picture as well. This, how have you done that? I mean, is that because Sarah's so good at it, or?
I mean, I think if you have a show, if you have the music, you have a show straight away. I mean, we all love live music. I think that when the musicians arrive here, then they start to play. That's the season starting, and you know, and the team here that work here all winter, they all get a spring in their step, and they all start to smile, and it's just so exciting. And having someone, I mean, Sarah, she's not working on this year's show, but we've worked with her for 4 years or so, and she was just great at bringing a structure to, you know, a bunch of raggle-taggle musicians and professional musicians. But I think it's the mix and that it's close up, and it just sort of goes back to that feeling of excitement. I mean, I'm kind of I think I'm like the rave generation as well. Like, I really think that kind of, like, actually is quite a big influence, that sort of feeling of a kind of community excitement, you know, a group excitement about music, which is to do with dance. And I think that feeling, that sort of ecstatic, euphoric feeling that is sort of at the heart of like the rave culture has been an influence, actually. Like, I think even, you know, it's not a particularly highbrow thing to say, but I think it's an influence. And Sarah's a really good composer, and again, it's just finding people who are going to throw their lot in with ours. And
before we finish, I just want to ask you a little bit about your own sort of position now in the circus. Obviously, you've fulfilled that dream. You're running Gifford Circus, which is very successful and widely praised and loved, I would say, by many of us who come to it. So where do you see yourself going next? I mean, what do you have further ambitions that you want to fulfil? I mean, you know, you're gonna go, because I notice you tour mostly in the Southwest. I mean, would you ever consider taking this nationwide or Europe-wide?
Oh, no, we definitely wouldn't go out of the UK, because the whole point was to make a beautiful show for the UK, and for it's kind of supply lines. Like, the circus is like an army. It's all about your supply lines. Unless you've got, we're hand to mouth, and we're self-funded, so we can't afford to just suddenly, you know, go to like Edinburgh because those supply lines would become so long and so difficult. So we have to do what we can do, but also I think that we will still do shows. I mean, we would never do shows without horses. They're really at the heart of it. So if there's a day when they say, well, you can't use horses in circus shows, we wouldn't do a circus. It's really hinged around the horses. We do have, I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's like a crisis. Like a circus is always a good circus is always in crisis, and it's always just about to be the last season. No, that was always the rumour on Roncalli, and I guess it's probably always. I think it's the rumour here. It's the last season, but I think that's good. That is kind of, it needs that sort of
keep people on their toes.
Yeah.
Nell Gifford, thank you very much for talking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and finding out a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.